the most anticipated construction update in the history of the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. So this is the first of several construction updates for what is known as North America. That won't be the official name, but this is it. This is where we're at. So what the heck has been going on with North America? Well, for several years, as you know, not much. We had some major delays here in North America, and it all revolved around some old foundations that were not on the drawings. This original facility was built almost 100 years ago. The early 30s, this was built 1930s. And the original plan, what it showed for the new structures, well, when we started digging for the foundations for the new structures, we ran into chunks of concrete the size of Massachusetts. I mean, just the biggest blobs of concrete you've ever seen. We couldn't get them out. And there were some other technical issues that basically made us go back to scratch and start again. And while the general concept here hasn't really changed, the structural elements have significantly changed, and some of the viewpoints have moved around. And the challenge we had is, in addition to having to essentially redesign the exhibit, while we needed to do the redesign, was right in the middle of a really small project down the hill called Elephant Trek that I think you may have heard about. So the timing was horrible. So essentially this job sat for almost 2 years. We just couldn't get to it. Well, Elephant Trek is over, hallelujah, and here we are. And we've been working on this pretty heavy for the last 6 months. You've probably seen a lot of the progress starting last fall. So what we're gonna do over the next few months is keep you up to date on what's going along as we anticipate opening this up later this summer into the early fall. So here we go. So we'll start with, there's essentially 3 big components to this project. There's Bear Ridge, Otter Coast, and then this adventure trail. Since we're standing in Bear Ridge, we'll talk about it. And this is the main part of the project. So if you recall, the old polar bear exhibit and the old bear pits had these big wing walls. There was one right where we're standing, and there was where that big pile of dirt is, there was another huge wing wall. All those got ripped out. And then the old moat, which was deceivingly small, it was actually much bigger than it appeared, was almost out to these new fake trees we're putting in. So the actual usable space for our polar bears and our black bears and our Asian bears back in the day was very, very limited. The amount of space that our bears are gonna have now compared to what they had is 5 times, which is the whole spirit of more home to roam. That's literally why we're doing all these projects, is providing more habitat, bigger spaces, so our animals can live their best lives. So if you can imagine this narrow strip, half of what you were looking at now was a moat. So it really shows you how skinny this was. In addition to those wing walls, it was very much an old school 100-year-old facility. And that's one of the challenges with this project, as a lot of you know, we're on a hill. We're up against the train tracks for Children's Zoo and the main loop. So there wasn't much spreading out. So we had to get rid of that moat, which we wanted to do anyway, and picked up all this space. So that's a beautiful thing. So what they're doing now is the site is roughly graded. They're putting in these gunite trees, which are essentially enrichment trees. They'll have hooks for hay and treats and enrichment and things like that. We have our couple bear caves, and eventually we're putting in some pretty significant trees. That'll be more in 6 or 8 weeks from now. But we're getting close here. I would say in about a month, we'll essentially have this Bear Ridge yard pretty well graded and ready for horticulture. And you all know when horticulture gets going, it's getting real. So this will be a beautiful exhibit. The viewing will be a lot different. The old days, when you used to look into polar bear, was from the main loop. And if you remember, it got stacked up, it was super tight. Now you'll have this upper and lower viewing area through glass, so you can look up and down what we call Bear Ridge. So much better perspective, and it'll feel more immersive because you have to come into essentially the exhibit to experience it. And then we'll have a heavy planting on this edge along the main loop. So totally different orientation of what we're used to, way more space for our animals. And that's the essence of Bear Ridge. And now let's go down to Otter Coast. One last stop before we get to Otter Coast. So this is the lower part of Bear Ridge. And if you look up on the rockwork, you see those yellowish stains. That's where the old waterfall used to be for the polar bear pool. We're redoing that, so we'll maintain that. And we have a new stream system put in, a nice big waterfall. This is gonna be the black bear pool, or the pool for the black bears. So for frame of reference, the old polar bear pool was right here. And if you remember, there used to be that thin strip where they used to walk back and forth, was right here. and then there was the moat. So all this space up in here is new space, all the way up there. So you can just get a sense of scale. Where that piece of equipment used to be, that's where that wall was. So those, before we made this project a reality, this was our space for polar bears. Now we have way more space for black bears. So the scale is going to be significantly better for their habitat. Right here is where is going to be the main entrance to the lower part of Bear Ridge and Sea Otter Coast. So this will be carved out like a giant sequoia tree that you could drive through like you see out west. That was half fallen over. So this will be the main entry to come up here. And here's the decision point where you can either go straight to Sea Otter Coast, or this is the lower viewing for Bear Ridge, looking up the ridge. So this will be a decision point here. And as we walk up, this will be where we have a big horticulture planter right here. And if you recall, this was where the polar bear pool was that they used to jump in, and the underwater polar bear viewing is up in here. So we'll walk up here as a guest, and here will be the glass covered shaded area. And this is the old polar bear dive-in pool you're looking at here. This is where Sea Otter Coast will be. You can see pretty significant pool for sea otters, which I'm not saying they're going to be the cutest animal in the zoo, but I am saying they're going to be in the conversation as being the cutest animal in the zoo. So what we're doing right now is leak testing. Basically filling up the tub, checking for leaks, and all the filtration equipment, which we'll show in another future video to get all this looking really good, is wrapping up right now. And we're going to kickstart that system here over the next few weeks to get this water looking really, really good. And that's one of the last big steps on this project, is getting this water filtration system up and running. And lastly, the third piece of this project we're calling the Adventure Trail. Not an animal facility, but this is where you will enter the upper Bear Ridge. So you'll walk up here to the right, you'll have this big glass viewing looking down Bear Ridge, which will see a really sweet vista. And then on the left there will be an opportunity for an keeper encounter to do training and things like that with a black bear. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then the rest of this space is gonna have a little rope bridge, some big boulders, some nice trees, some benches. Quite frankly, just a nice place to sit, relax in the shade. And as you all know, we can't have enough of that around the zoo. We're a small urban zoo, so anytime we can create a little nook and cranny, we try to do it. So this is an intro to the project, but also just a nice place to be. So that's the update.